There we go. We are live, right? Welcome everyone to the Volleyball Coach Podcast. I'm your host, Alejandro de Mendoza. I am a private lessons coach. I'm a club director. I'm passionate about helping coaches, players, and parents grow the game that we all love. Each week, we're going to look at some awesome guests that are going to talk about performance analysts, some game ready, some private lesson coaching, some tips and tricks, and bring in awesome guests for everyone here, right? So today, I am super excited to introduce my really good friend, Josh. Josh is an absolutely amazing person. Let's see. So Josh played at BYU. He was part of the 2004 National Championships. He's known as the BB Mindsetter. Josh is a high-performance mindset coach specific for volleyball players. He works with pro, collegiate, and youth players. Some of the top achievements include working with No Easy Buckets, Dustin One, going from the 22nd to arguably the best passer libero in the world. He also has worked with Joey Fleck to become first team All-American and winning a 2022 national championship eventually. He uses his signature pre-game visualization technique called Game Ready. Josh helps players master their mind so they can master their game. Josh, thank you for joining on my first episode of this podcast. I'm super stoked with you. I've got to meet you kind of like over the years, and I'm really, really excited for you to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having me at the inaugural The Volleyball Coach Podcast. I love it. Thanks.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And, I think having you on as a guest, just to start this off, I think is absolutely amazing. I think you bring such a value to the game. I think everyone, as far as coaches and players, they put so much emphasis in, the technical side of things. But I think you bring such an important edge when it comes to the mental side. So I'm really excited to bring you on and really kind of dive down and get into the weeds about, what does the mental side look like for the players, for coaches, and also for the parents, right? Because you can't take the parents outside of that equation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's great to be here. And before we get started, I'll say for your listeners who listen to the very end, I have a free gift that I think is pretty cool that I'll be giving some free access to all your listeners.
I love that. Dude, thank you so much. I know everyone who's listening and watching is going to get a ton of great value because this guy is definitely one of the best in what he does. So let's really dive into that right now. I think when we're thinking about the mindset and just broad strokes, what do you believe are some of the common mistakes you see athletes make?
Yeah, it's a great question. And before we get in that, let me kind of tell the listeners how I, kind of my backstory so they understand how I got to this. I grew up playing just about every sport, there was all the big major sports, football, baseball, soccer, wrestling, basketball. And then I ended up playing volleyball my junior year in high school. And I went and served an LDS mission for 2 years in Brazil. That was amazing. Served a bunch of people, helped people all over Brazil. And then when I came back, I wanted to play a college sport. So I walked on to the BYU football team. I made the team, but then my position coach.
Wait, you got on football? That's how you started?
Yeah.
What position do you play?
Wide receiver.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. So I made the football team at BYU as a wide receiver. I get called into the office of my position coach, and he tells me, "Hey, I really don't know who you are, even though the head coach added you, Coach Croton. We just have too many receivers, so I'm gonna have to cut you." So I never even saw the practice field. But was like, okay, you know what? I played volleyball in high school too. I see their tryouts are in a couple of days. So I go over and I try out, and I didn't make that team either. But here's where like the story gets good, and this is what ultimately led me into doing what I do today is there was a bunch of guys complaining, like kind of, like, what, you're not going to keep anybody else, I'm better than him, blah blah blah. They only kept one guy, and at the time they were number one ranked team in the country. And I went over to like the assistant of the assistant of the assistant, just the volunteer coach. And I gave him my number and I just said, hey, if you ever need someone just to beat up on, like, I'll come. And just a couple weeks later, I get a call from him and he said, you know what? I really liked your attitude. His name was Greg. Greg was like, I really liked your attitude. Would you mind coming and practicing with us today? We have a middle who's sick and we need someone to fill in. Nobody wants to play middle blocker, right? It was like, and so boom, I go.
There's a lot of hate for middles. I swear. Everyone is trying to get out of playing middles. I see that so much in the club world. I'm glad to know that even back when you were playing in the early 2000s, people were still trying to get out of playing middle.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't change, right? It's such a hard position, right? Sideline to sideline. It takes so much energy and mindset. So yeah, I come and I show up and all because of my attitude, right? They just I just played day in, day out. They kept asking me to come back, and then soon, they were like, "Are you changing in the bathroom?" So they start giving me like sharing their locker, and they're like, bro, you are wearing some scrubs, man. Like, let's give you some BYU issue, like some official volleyball stuff. Then they start telling all the girls I was on the team. I didn't mind that. And then, I did this for a whole year until finally I came back and was an official member of the team. But again, it started with my attitude and my mindset, right? The way I approached it was different. And I noticed that. And yeah, and I think that years later, that's one of the key things that led me to coming back and doing mindset coach with volleyball players. So that's a little backstory on me.
No, I think it's important that we get a little bit of the backstory of where we started, because I think our experiences shape who we are, right? That's the choices we make throughout our lives is what brought us to this moment, and I think it's really important for the people listening and watching, like, hey, how did you get to this point, learning about this, and how did it affect you as an athlete? I think that's extremely valuable.
Yeah. And so to get to your question, like, hey, I have like three ones that I like to talk about a lot, three kind of mental mistakes that players make that I help them with. They're some of the most common, right? So is it funny? One of the ones that comes up the most is trouble focusing, like a lack of focus. And when I first got out of college, I went into this sales job, and the guy who was training us all, I was back on the East Coast, guy's training us all, big sales guy, knows his stuff. And he's giving everybody like these little tips, like, for you, because I know you now after our month together, here's what you can do, like your superpower. Oh, and I was like, raising my hand, like, what can I do? And he goes, you need to focus on focus. So he's like telling everybody what to focus on. And he's like, you need to focus on focus. I was so upset.
Easy to remember. That makes it really easy to remember.
Yeah. And I was like, he was saying like all this super insightful stuff to all these other guys. And I was like, what a jerk. Like, focus on focus. Like, what a backhanded slap, right? But he was so right. My young ego was getting in my way, but he was so right. Focus really with what happens, right? We all get distracted. You could be distracted by something negative, by like a mistake. You could be distracted, because of the team you're playing, and now you have some fear because it's a really good team. You could be distracted by good things. You could be distracted by your goals. You're so worried about winning and how you're going to be perceived, and those things, although they're good, they can cause you to be thinking about the wrong things during the match. Okay. And um, so how do I help players overcome this? Well, the first principle that I use, it is something that comes from New York Times best-selling author. He's also a behavioral scientist and a BYU alum as well. His name is Joseph Grenny, and he did a study and he put it together in a book called Influencer. And the gist of that whole study is that top performers focus on behaviors rather than outcomes. And I took that, and I was at this conference, like he was speaking to like a small conference, maybe like 100 of us, for a private networking group that I belong to for my business. And just amazing to get to sit with him. And I just realized, like, wow, this for volleyball players, and this is before I started working with volleyball players, right? It's like, wow, that's so valuable for athletes. Realizing like what you need to do is focus on behavior. So how do you do that? How I do it with my clients is I have them focus on what I call intentions. And when I say intention, I don't mean like, oh, I intended to hit that ball in or anything. An intention is defined as a behavior that is within your control. So it could be, usually you'll hear coaches say, yeah, the only things you can control are your attitude and your effort. Well, right, you probably said it too, right? Before to your players.
No, I think I've heard it once or two while I'm playing. I feel like that's what my old basketball coach used to tell me, to be honest.
Exactly. So it's the ways that you think. You can control how you think. You can control the way you feel, and you can control the way that you act. Right? So those are the three. And so what I do is I work with players specifically to make sure, instead of being focused on all those other things while they're playing, they're focused on the specific behavior that's within their control. It could be just having fun again. A lot of my pro players, as soon as I help them have fun again, they take off. Or it could be some specific, again, stop overthinking. Like, let's just simplify. Like, simplify your thoughts. Be focused on, independent arms was something that Dustin always worked on, right? One of my favorite stories is outside hitter Eric Lepke for Team Canada and plays pro in Italy. He when he and I started working together, he was used to always being the biggest stud around. And now he gets to the pros and you're just a nobody. You're just a rookie, right? And we started working together, and he had this match at the beginning. We worked together at the end of his season. That was a cool story. I helped him win MVP of the match, and he prevented their team from getting relegated down to the next division. So we saved their season, which was a really cool experience.
Yeah, that's something that I guess a lot of American sports don't really understand is, in Europe, it's very popular, whether it's soccer or volleyball, they have multiple divisions. So if your team doesn't perform, like, you have a really good chance of getting relegated into the lower division. Here, I'm thinking about like the Lions. You can have a no-win season, and what happens? You get rewarded with some good draft picks. It's very interesting how it is over here compared to in Europe.
Yeah, it's totally different. Absolutely. So, yeah, and so then we start the next season, and we switch things up a little bit for him to start the season. And the intention we gave him was creativity. Eric Lepke is one of the most creative players you'll ever see on his attack. And so he starts this match, the first match of the season. He goes up, they give him line. He cranks it out. It's like, no. So now what's he thinking? He's thinking, okay, I got to go hard angle. Well, guess what they're thinking too? Well, if he missed a wide open line, he's probably going to go angle this time. So they're sitting on it, block him straight down. Now he's like, oh my goodness. But again, we worked on this new intention, right? And we worked on this creativity, like, hey, maybe I'm just not like swinging away like that today. You just got to be a little bit more creative. That's my biggest asset anyway. So let's just go back to creativity. And then I use animals. Okay, we call them the beast triggers. And that's one of the things that makes my program most unique, what makes it more actionable. If you think like Kobe Bryant and the Mamba mentality, right? Even when you think of Kobe, you see him like slithering through the defense, right? He embodied it. So we had Eric embody the rhino. The rhino has the highest mortality rate of any mammal because when they fight to the death. And so it's this total absolute commitment to that one intention. So we use this beast to help him kind of embody that, feel like he's the rhino. No matter what happens, he's committed to his creativity. And even his wife afterwards was like, well, this stuff is working, because usually you would tank after that kind of a start, and you had a really solid match. So the stuff's working. So that's just a great story and gives you an insight to kind of how I work with players on that one.
So I'm sure you have plenty of stories like that. I think a lot of players can really relate to some of those moments, right? Where you start off a match, maybe not the way you wanted to. And it only really goes down two paths, either you go down in spiral or, you can really take a moment to recognize what's going on and try to shift that mindset.
Yeah, for sure. So that's the first one I was thinking of. The second one, what happens a lot is players just have negative self-talk, right? Pretty common. And I think it stems a lot from our childhood, maybe things that our parents said, maybe things that friends said to us on the playground, or even thoughts that we just had about ourselves that maybe no one infused in us. We just thought them, maybe because we're super critical. I know a lot of athletes were like super critical, right? And we could be the nicest person to others, but sometimes we beat ourselves up so much for not being perfect, right? And so this negative self-talk is just toxic, and it can multiply, right? It just festers and multiplies. And so that's something that I like to think of, this quote by Viktor Frankl. I don't know if Viktor Frankl, he's a Holocaust survivor. And he says, in between stimulus and response, there's a space. In this space is the power to choose your response. And in your response lies your growth and your freedom. So it's just getting players to kind of understand this space, right? That they have, that to have that kind of a response. And there's a really cool guy named Maxwell Maltz, psychologist, and he says our brains have steering mechanisms just like a missile does. Missiles are off course most of the time. They're kind of making these micro adjustments. You don't realize it because the way they fly, but they're kind of wobbling because it keeps trying to get back because it has to account for the wind and the altitude and all these things. And so it keeps refocusing on the target and dropping, like not recording the raw negative data. It wants to keep the data that gets it back on track. So I work with my players on just like ditching that, right? Like ditching the negative. Yeah, it may come in, but ditch it. And the beast I like to use for that one is the Mima and Lima. It's mind mastery is life mastery. Mima and Lima, and it's the armadillo. I personally like to envision it as like Mickey Mouse ears on my head, like these two armadillos. But like armadillos, they can just close up, and then a predator can't get in, right? Because they got that hard shell on the outside. So just boom, just don't let those negative thoughts in, right? I like to think of like bullets like shooting, just like and just like ricocheting off these armadillos, right, that are on my head. It's like a little, the more fun you make it, the more you kind of take to it.
I'm sure it makes it much more easier to like remember, like having all these analogies and stuff, like the armadillo. I think a lot of kids can really picture that really clearly in their mind.
Yeah, exactly. The retention rate on our on my content is ridiculously higher than other mental performance stuff. I'm not saying don't do the other mental performance stuff. You should. The stuff I do makes it more actionable. It can help them chunk those concepts into ways that they can remember, right? So my favorite story for this one is Zoe Fleck. So when Zoe was still at UCLA before she transferred, she came here to Utah. And so I came and I did a live game ready. That's my pre-game visualization I do. We did it live in the locker room. Well, kind of like a side room. She snuck me in and we went to the side room and I gave her a game ready right before the match. And it was a barn burner. It went 5 and it was close, and UCLA hit the ball out, but they called a touch. Well, they went and looked back. So UCLA was like, oh, we won. And then they went and looked back and they couldn't find a touch, right? Utah challenged it. I mean, in that situation, it would be so easy to just like get upset, let the negative thoughts in, like start being like, no, we won. Like, this is ridiculous. But this was something Zoe and I had worked on, right? Just this poise and this calm in the midst of the storm. Okay. And as we prepared before the match, she already kind of had this infused. So then we go there, right? This happens and they decide, all right, we got to play on. Zoe just plays out of her mind. She doesn't care what the score is. She's not worried about what's going on. She dug so many balls in that last like next 6-7 points as it went, on and on to like 20, whatever. I think it ended like 22-20, and it was wild because, then Utah got a touch, but then they went back and looked and they didn't get it either. So it was like, went back and forth. Finally, UCLA got the winning point. We won. We celebrated. But again, it's just that poise and all that up and down that you could have easily emotionally got upset about, all just from controlling, like Mima and Lima, right? Control our mind. Like, don't let any of those negative thoughts come in. So it was a great, great moment. So that's number 2. So focus, negative thoughts. The other thing, and this is kind of my signature, is so you may get rid of negative thoughts, but sometimes they could be good at it, but during the match, maybe something could creep in. Or maybe just because like I mentioned, a lot of the negative thoughts you have, they're ingrained in you from your childhood, right? And you remember these. They're impactful in a negative way on you. And so it's hard you may be able to keep out the new ones, but some of these lingering ones that are more ingrained in you. So I came up with this process, which I call flip the script. And I think one of my favorite stories about it is my own. Growing up, I had big feet. I had a size 12 shoe when I was 12 years old. And that was a bean.
That's some big feet, my man. How tall are you right now?
I'm 6'2", and I wear a size 14 now.
Oh, so you grew in.
Yeah, I grew into them. But even at BYU, everybody would be like, man, like you have the size of feet of like a 6'6" guy. So anyway, but I grew up, listen to the toxicity in this. You have clown feet. That's how I grew up. Everybody said, oh man, look at those clown feet. Even in my own family, yeah, he's got clown feet. So I grew up with this internal self-talk that I'm just like a big, goofy, dumb jock with clown feet, right? And I don't know, maybe a lot of players can relate to this. If anybody's ever had body parts that other people shamed growing up, and now it affects the way you feel, the way you play.
No, absolutely. I think even personally for me, growing up, I'm Colombian. My parents are from South America, and affectionately in my family, my aunts and uncles, they all call me gordo, which in Spanish means pretty much little fat kid.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I grew up thinking I was like always overweight and just large. And I didn't realize until I was much older and I went back to my parents' house and I saw like old pictures of me back in high school. And I'm like, dude, I would kill to have that body. I was fit, super skinny, but it's crazy how I didn't even notice how that just simple word or that nickname that I had, how much it affected me mentally as a kid.
Yeah, and it's the same. By the way, same thing in Brazil. They say gorginho or gorginha, and it's like no big thing. Hey, little fatty, and you're like, as an American, I remember the first time hearing it, I was like, you're calling her that like right in front of her face, like that's so like
Yeah, it's
crazy.
it's a term of endearment, and
It is.
I actually talked to my parents about it later on. But yeah, I didn't realize how much again until much later in my life, in my 30s, and I look back, I'm like, wow, man, I didn't really realize how much that really messed me up as a kid in my mind.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, right? So here I am with this in my mind, and now I start playing volleyball. The first match of my senior year, I'm from the Bay Area in California. We're playing Camp Lindo, and they're all super experienced. I think they were even the defending league champions. And so I go into this match, I trip and fall into the net, trip over my big clown feet, and I fall in it just like a fish, right? Just fly into the net, get caught in the net. And I remember, like, I was on the drive home, just like crying. We got our butts kicked, and I'm like just crying, like trying to not let anybody see that I'm crying. And back then we didn't use buses, so I was just driving with my coach and his dad. His dad, Don Petrilli, was the coach, the head coach of the professional women's team at the time, the San Jose Storm. And he was just like, Josh, I've seen some studies that show that when you have a bigger foot, you actually have a bigger lever. So you can actually jump higher. And just that one seed that he planted helped me flip the script in my mind. And guess what my nickname was at BYU? Jumpin' Josh.
Jumpin' Josh, I love that. I love it again, like you said, just flipping that script.
Yeah, absolutely. It's crazy how I flipped the script in my mind with the help of a coach, and that changed the trajectory of my volleyball life, my volleyball career.
Yeah, I think that just shows how important the words and actions are of coaches, and how players see them. It could
Yeah.
really, it can either shape a kid or it can destroy a kid, the way you talk to them and some of the things you say to them. And, you got to be, I think now, especially, you have to, with all the information that's out there, you have to be really mindful of like how you phrase things and how you want to come across as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, those are the three things that I see most commonly with my players. I deal with a myriad of other issues that they have, but those are probably the three most common.
The three of us, you mind refreshing us real quick? What were those three?
Lack of focus, negative thoughts that come in, and then like these deeper negative thoughts, you're maybe keeping the new negative thoughts out, but you would just have some baggage or some old negative thoughts that you just can't quite get out. So
No, I love that. I think any player really like looking at this and reviewing some of the things. I think this is gonna be something that a lot of players can go back and like really kind of look to see in themselves like, right, where do I fall on any of these things? And the real at the end of it is like, all right, how can I fix this? How can I improve?
yeah, awesome.
Love that. So as far as for like the coaches, we got a lot of coaches who um are looking into the mental side and understand how important the mental side is, and they try to help their athletes, have better performance on the court. What are some things that you see coaches do that that maybe they can just do better?
Well, the one thing that stands out the most, and I'm guilty of doing it too in the past as a coach, is yelling at your kids. It's
Hey,
like,
when I first started coaching and I was like 20, that was like honestly how I coach. I would be yelling and because that's how I was coached. And all coaches when they first start out, when it comes to coaching, they emulate how they were coached, right? And I would yell, and I always thought that as a form of like being just really passionate. And over the years, like after like 2 or 3 years, like man, this is exhausting yelling at kids all the time, and it wasn't my style. And I think along the way I found my own style, but I still see that a lot of just coaches just yelling at their athletes.
yeah. And I mean, I came from a football world. I mean, my coach used to get in my face all the time because we did really well. In fact, we played Ken Dorsey in football for the CIF championship in the Bay Area. They won. That's what Ken Dorsey went on to play for Miami and won a national championship and then played for the Niners, right? Um, and we lost, so we didn't do that. but um, but yeah, my coach, he would always get in my face because we were winning a lot. And he'd be like, "You think you're a crap, don't stink," right? Just yelling, just like berating us. So yeah, so, and we do it a lot of times. We're not meaning to do it in a negative way. Like we see something negative, we want to call it out right then, so maybe we don't forget. There's lots of different, or it could just be, that's the way you are. But I've really seen it. I had a player who she was my first player ever, actually, years ago. She was a daughter of a friend, and I helped her go in 3 weeks. I helped her go from riding the bench to becoming a starter. So we worked through a lot of great things, but then they were in the playoffs and she's playing pretty well, but she messes up on a block. Like she didn't get out to the pin and her coach lays into her. And I could see it from the stands, right? And just deflated. And then she started to play worse. And then ultimately he pulled her out. And so this was state championships. So in between that match and the next match, they ended up winning. But in between that matches, I pulled her aside and I was like, what are you so worried about?" "Well, he's yelling at me." And I'm like, "Yeah, I saw." And I'm like, "But think about this. This is just volleyball. This is like the most important thing in life. Like, right, is there a sniper in the stands right now who's just like, if you make a mistake, you're dead. He's gonna shoot you." And of course, then she laughs, right? She's like, "No." Like, I was like, what's the most important thing in your life? And she's like, "My mom and my brother," right? And just, I was like, let's focus on that. Let's focus on the things that you have. You don't need anything from this match. It's all just joy, expression of all that you've learned throughout your volleyball career. You're probably never going to play again, right? She didn't really want to play in college. So it's just like, let's just go have fun. She came out in the next match and just was lights out, just played amazing. And her mom just touches me on the shoulder from behind and just with tears in her eyes says, "Thank you so much for what you've taught my daughter, not just on the court, but how it's helped her off the court." Right. And so it's like, man, if we as coaches can avoid triggering our kids, I think we could make a greater impact in people's lives.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really great things I think you just said. One was using a little bit of humor to build that trust. I think that's so huge as a great, really good coaching tool. And I'm a really big believer of like if the studies on the negative and positive reinforcement and the negative reinforcement, in like little short spurts. Yeah, you can get a little bit more out of your athlete, but if that is your only way of motivation, athletes are just gonna tune you out, right? And the studies on positive reinforcement long term are just so much more beneficial, right? And I love how just like that really simple tool, just getting a little humor in, get a little chuckle, build that, rapport, right? And that they're going to be so much more likely to listen to your advice, to take a chance on what you're trying to say, whatever, whether it's feedback mentally or just even physical, technical, they're going to be more willing to listen, if you have that trust built in.
Yeah, 100%. And hey, you still might yell sometimes, but the goal is to like reduce it. Try to reduce how much, find a different technique that works, right? Other than yelling. Like write it down if that's the whole point. Like write it down what you saw, make a mental note, pull them aside later. And if you still yell sometimes, like that's okay. Get really good at repair. Be really good at the repair step of relationship management, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, it's little doses. Like if it's okay to be passionate. I think I've coached a lot of kids who they say they like when their coach gets fired up, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with showing kids that you care or that you want them to win or you want them to be successful. But I think there's a time and place for it, and you just can't be doing it the whole time. Like the whole practice can't be like that. I think there has to be ebbs and flows, right? And you have to, I think, find moments to really make it impactful and to get the results you want, and which is to motivate your athlete to be their best.
yeah, for sure. And then I would say another one that really comes to mind is not talking to your athletes. Happens a lot, right? I mean, I remember, like you're saying, early on in my career, I pulled a kid last game of the season, pulled her, and then I didn't go talk to her. She was fine. She just made a couple mistakes. I'm like, all right, we just got to pull you out. We'll put somebody in who's just like feeling it right now. So to me, it was nothing, right? And her dad calls me later, like, now I have a broken girl sitting in her room, and I'm like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Like, it was like my first year of coaching, right? And girls anyway. And this is 20 years ago. But yeah, so but I noticed this too. It's even at the professional level. Okay, I just had one of my pro players. We had a call, and he's like, Josh, I'm all in my head. Like, I don't know what my coach is thinking. I used to start, but then I got injured, and now I'm ready to go again, and this, that, or other. And he's so worried about, and I'm like, why don't you just go talk to him? He's like, yeah, okay.
What a concept, right?
And so I'm like, let's stop guessing. But again, for coaches, like it's better if you can be proactive about that, because the players, like, they just start creating up narratives in their mind of all the things that could be wrong with them, or maybe they start getting angry with their coach. Like, it's just not good. It creates a rift no matter what. So like, try to have those conversations. In this case, it was actually amazing. I mean, maybe I don't want to tell you the specifics because it involves some certain players that we all know for Team USA. But let me say this. His coach said, well, last year I started a guy after he told me he was ready, and he tore something, got even more injured, and that's why he wasn't ready for the Olympics. And so he's like, I felt so bad about that I didn't want to do that to you too. Totally changed his perspective. Oh my gosh, my coach is trying to protect me and make sure I'm fully ready to come back.
Yeah, that completely changes the story, right? Like you said, like if that lack of communication, the players start to come up with their own stories, right? Because of it, you choose not to say anything, but it turns out like, hey, they're looking out for your best interest. I'm not saying that's all the cases for everyone, but I think having that sense of clarity is so huge to make sure everyone's on the same page when you're a coach and you're coaching a team. And having role clarity, I think, also is a really important thing when it comes under really making sure you talk to each kid and they understand what their role is on the team and what you expect out of them. Because again, if you're doing that in the front end in the beginning of the season, as a coach, you're gonna avoid, I think, a lot of issues down the road if you don't have some of these tough conversations right off the bat.
Yeah, and you know what? That's like a management philosophy that I have for any relationship. Put people first and have conversations early about where they want to be next, what they want to do, right? And help them get there, right? Sometimes it throws people off when you do that. Like, hey, right now I don't envision you as a starter, but I'd love to help you get there if that's what you want, right? Or whatever that is. Um, get to the
No,
next
like,
level.
yeah, no, it's like you said, it clears up, like in your example, like, all right, you're not a starter right now. All right. This is where you fall in the depth chart. You need to be able to do X, Y, and Z if you want to become a starter, right? And now she or he has a clear path, right? Now it's not all ambiguous and, oh, why is she playing? I've been playing really good. But if you have those conversations early and you set a clear path and how this athlete can achieve their goal, now there's no ambiguity. Now she understands the reasoning why, okay, she's playing because she's passing better than me. Coach really wants the best passes out there. That's really important to my coach. I got to make sure that's what I put my time into. That's what I'm improving so I can get onto the court. And now we have a clear path and there's no storytelling, right? That they're telling themselves in their mind and you know how it can go. And sometimes those stories are not always great or they can run rampant. But I think having that clarity and having those tough conversations early can really clear some of that stuff up.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, no, growing up, nobody ever did that with me. Like, no coach ever pulled me aside and had conversations with me, right? But it really happens, right? Like, you're like, well, why? Like, every time in practice that you put me in this scenario, I make amazing play after amazing play. Why aren't you playing me? Like, oh, I don't know. Maybe they're looking for a certain consistency, or you're getting those results, but you're not doing it the right way, which means like I can't rely on that because I don't know if that's going to go in or out, right? So it's just, but you have to have those conversations, I think. Be proactive as a coach.
Yeah, it just clears everything up. Like I think for all coaches, they put a lot of effort and time in learning the X's and O's of volleyball. And I personally think that's the easiest part. The hardest part is the human aspect, right? That understanding that you're dealing with um, a group of people who all have individual experiences, past experiences that are unique to them. They all have different goals and different mindsets. Some are want to play at the next level, and some want to just be fun with their friends. And I think really taking the time to learn your athletes and see what motivates them can really go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so those are the first two I talked about. Yelling at players and then talking, like having conversations. The third thing that I'd say most commonly coaches, like the problems that coaches have, like from a mindset perspective that they bring to me is um we do stuff. We do some journaling, we do like some mental performance stuff, we listen to this and that. What we have a hard time is like making it actionable. And that's where all these things that I was telling you about, like I use the beast triggers, right? And I use the game ready. The game ready is a pre-game visualization that acts like hypnosis. And hypnosis is not weird. When I was a kid, I used to think hypnosis was so weird, like, right? Our brains hypnotize us on a daily basis. If you've ever just been like driving and then you get to where you're going, you're like, that's scary. I don't even remember that last stretch. Like your brain hypnotized you, right? And so that's that our brain does it naturally throughout the day. So it's just allowing your brain to be in this mindset to allow for flow or to happen, right? To be in that state of mind. So again, so that's like obviously then I say, well, what I do doesn't compete with any other things that you're trying to coach your kids on. It doesn't compete with any other mental performance philosophies. Continue to use that guy or that gal that you love. My stuff just makes it more actionable. Like you said, they'll remember it better. They'll use it more in the match, right? And it locks in all those things that you're trying to feed into them. The game ready can lock it in for the match. And so that's again, like everybody's like, oh, I just don't know how to make it actionable. Well, of course, then that's my, that's when I plug, I have my own plug, right? Yeah, I'll use the beast triggers in the game ready. But yeah, that's
I'm sure you
huge.
love hearing that question. That, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What action should I take? Like, I got it. Watch. I got something you need right here.
Yeah, that's always fun. Anyway, so those are the three with coaches. So three players, three coaches, right?
No, that's awesome. I think, again, super huge. A lot of really, really good stuff. I think that coaches can really take away that they could just, again, just really think about what they're looking for and what maybe they can take a second to think about their own coaching style or, whether it's the yelling or it's uh, sorry, I'm
Talking,
blanking out.
having
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, having those conversations. And it's just, I think that's extremely valuable for a lot of coaches to really think about not only how to teach passing, how to teach blocking, but really diving into some of the human side of sports, which I think is arguably, I think the biggest side, right? That's going to affect how we're going to perform and if we're going to be successful or not be able to perform those skills at a high level consistently. So I guess the last segment that I'm sure everyone's waiting to listen for is the parent side. You cannot separate the parents from the kids. When we're talking about club sports and youth athletics, as much as some coaches don't want to stay away from the parents, I've heard some rules of stuff where like, oh, like the parents aren't your friends. Don't talk to them. Don't look at them. And you always want to keep them at arm's distance. But you can't separate the two. The parents are a vital part of the athlete's experience. So for the parents, what are some common mistakes that you see parents do that they could probably improve when it comes to mental performance for their athletes and their kids?
Yeah, well, I'm a parent as well of two club athletes, right? My son's in volleyball and my daughter's in soccer. And so I can speak also from experience, but the first one I think of that I see most often is pushing their kids too hard, right? And so, in fact, I have a team that I'm working with right now, and the coach said, "Yeah, I was just like, I'm having a hard time understanding this, you know, this focus on behaviors rather than outcomes because I want them to get from point A to point B, but they're not doing it and they're capable of doing it." And I'm like, "Oh, I see." So they're like kind of using it as an excuse. And she's like, his parents ride him so hard, right? And I like honestly, I never wanted to be that dad. Like I remember thinking about this growing up. Maybe it's just being a product of the 80s, like seeing the movies with the dads that were like that, right? But I was surprised. Like I thought, I was worried I would be like that as a dad, but I really let my kids, yeah, I pushed them to try different things, but I allowed them to then decide what they wanted to do and what they wanted to continue with. And every year I meet with them and ask them, what are your goals? And I set goals with my kids every year. And I just talk about what they want and where they want to be. And it's hard because you want to push them because you expect so much from them. And maybe sometimes you see them, slacking in certain areas and you feel like you're the closest person to them. Sometimes we are the hardest on the people we should be the most loving and kindest to, which is ourselves, our children, our spouses. We would dare say something like that to a stranger, but we say these things to our kids and push them. And it really negatively affects the kids once they get in the gym with the coaches that I work with.
Yeah, it's and the more I think about it, about the behaviors and the outcomes, and you're absolutely right. There are certain behaviors that are going to lead you to get to where you want, right? It's the difference between process focus and result focus, right? And understanding that there is a process and there are certain behaviors you want to have that are going to help you get there. But I think sometimes I don't know, maybe in your experience, I know you're working with kids, a lot of, parents trying to live vicariously through their kids.
Yeah, and I mean, no matter what, like you're going to do that. It's so fun. And that's I live vicariously through my players. I mean, I never got to play professionally, um, and so it's fun to help them go way beyond what I'm capable of, right? And to be able to be a part of that is cool. But yeah, at some point you have to make sure that they want it, which kind of actually leads into the second thing that I was thinking of for parents is not listening to their kids. And um, I had this kid. So the pushing your kids, like that was one where a kid, he wants to play, but he gets triggered every time you tell him to do something. He just got so caught up in like trying to show effort all the time. And it's like a lot of effort just spinning his wheels, but like not doing much. And that's just like it just gets triggered into this negative trigger into like this like, well, I'm trying so hard so that he never has to be like held to that standard, right? That the pushing him. So, but like not listening to your kids. I had this player, and all my clients are different. Some of the parents like to be on the call with the kids I work with when I do one-on-one coaching. Some of them like to just be in the other room. Some of them don't even get on. I record them all just for everyone's protection, right? I record every episode so everybody knows what's going on. But I just got a sense from this one of my players, just the way she was talking and the way her parents were like inputting. I felt like they just weren't quite hearing her. I know that wasn't what they thought they were doing, but that's what was happening in my mind. I was perceiving this. So I was like, hey, can we just hop on a call, just me and you, just to help her through something, right? So I hop on a call with her, and it turns out she doesn't even want to play volleyball. She she just wants to spend more time with her friends, because she only has so much time with those friends left. And it was just like, wow, they just were not hearing her. Or maybe she wasn't expressing, but they weren't creating a space where they could listen to their kid.
Yeah, I think I'm a club director. I work with over 400 or 500 athletes every year in my club here in Irvine, and there are it's a lot of time. The tournaments, the travel. If you're playing at a really, really level, you're also doing private lessons, and it's a lot of training, and you got to really, really enjoy it. And I think that some kids are just doing it just because their parents want them to, right? From my own experience, I've done some private lessons, one-on-ones with some kids, and it was like babysitting for their parents. Like they wanted them to go do something, and they had really no interest in being there or training or working hard or learning, and it really trying to get to those kids and trying to connect with them was extremely difficult. But it's not for everything. It actually made me think about one of the things that surprised me the most playing volleyball in college was the amount of people who quit. And that absolutely blew my mind. How many people, the men's and the women's side, in other sports, how many people quit? Like you get all the way to D1, you do all this work, you achieve your dreams, and you get there and you quit. And I think that to me is absolutely crazy. You just don't understand what it takes to actually get there, right? And then how hard it is to stay there.
Yeah, and I mean, I walked on, and I played every day with a Fab 50 player, and he quit the next season. And I was like you, I was like, what? On scholarship, Fab 50 player quits, and here I am. Like I'm just a scout teamer the year we win the
Yeah,
national
just
tournament.
grinding. You're a grinder. You're just grinding it out, and I think that says a lot about there are those who you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't really enjoy it, at some point something's gonna give, right? And if you like doing the hard work like you grinded it out, and you eventually were able to get onto the team. It's that shocked me a lot, just how many people quit when they get all the way to even the highest level here in the United States playing college volleyball, and other sports too. It's not easy.
Yeah, absolutely. The third one I would say, and this may be funny to say, but I talk to a lot of parents. Not all of them sign up to work with me. And so I would say a problem I see is a lot of people don't understand how important mindset is or mental performance training as a parent, right? They're like, no, we're already paying for the club. Like, I don't, you know, like, yeah, we'll just keep doing what we're doing, right? And I mean, the science, like, I can show you study after study. One study I love to share is a study done by a Dr. Yue, Yue, out of the Cleveland Clinic Foundation in Ohio. And he had these weightlifters, or we just had these people follow a weightlifting program for 60 days in the gym, and they increased their muscle mass by 32% in this 60 days. He had another group that just visualized doing that same workout, and they actually increased their muscle mass. Physical muscle grew 13.5%.
Wait, say that one more time because that I don't think people understand that. So wait, there was a group that actually did it, did the workouts and grew in the 30 something percent. And there
32%
was,
increased muscle mass from the workout they did.
and then there was a group that just thought about it and like visualized it.
Yeah, just thought through, visualized every day the same workout at the same times that those who were physically going. All they did was think through the workout. And they increased the actual physical mass of their muscles by 13.5%.
Dude, Josh, you just blew my mind. That's crazy. That's insane.
Yeah, and it's like obviously it's not going to be anywhere near actually hitting the gym, but it's the point is to like see how powerful your mind really is. It is an amazing tool. That's why I say if you master your mind, you master your game.
No, I love that. And it makes me even think about like one step further of like combining the two, right? Put the visualizing, and actually putting in the work and just gaining, I'm guessing so much more.
Yeah, and I'm like, my wife keeps saying to me, like, Josh, you need to put together a camp and I have a bunch of stuff written out of like drills you can do, and then you do them, and then you do it with a mindset tool, and then you do so much better. And then you go, oh man, this really does make a difference. So I have some things like stored. I don't know, maybe one day I'll offer something like that, but
No, I love it. I think there's like just a ton of value in this. And that's actually that's the main reason I brought you on first. Because like when I was thinking about putting this podcast together and who I wanted to talk to and speak to, I'm like, oh, dude, Josh, that's like an easy person I can go talk to. He has so much great stuff in value that I think that people who follow me on Instagram and on YouTube and Twitch, like they're gonna absolutely love this. And I'm sure there's going to be a ton more questions. I wouldn't be surprised if people are going to ask me in the future, man, can we get Josh back on?
awesome. All right, so here's the free gift I'll give to all of your listeners, okay? Every single listener is going to get this free gift. Go to my website. My website is VB Mindsetter. You can see it in my handle there, vbmindsetter.com. Go to vbmindsetter.com. You'll see there's a button on there, a big yellow button that says 7-day mindset course. Click on that, and then it takes you to my mindset course. It usually costs $11. Click to buy it, and then in the discount code, put in the Volleyball Coach, and you'll get it for free. It is awesome. It's interactive. It goes deeper than what I did today. 7 days worth of the 7 mental mistakes that my pro players have had that I've helped them through, and how to get through them. Some of the things we talked about today, but I go deeper. I give you some exercises and all these things, and it's all interactive, super cool. You earn badges as you go. It's awesome. Free for you guys. vbmindsetter.com. Click on the 7-day mindset course. Click to buy it, and then put in the code the Volleyball Coach, and you'll get it for free.
Dude, thank you so much, Josh. That's absolutely amazing. I'm going to make sure there's going to be a link for your website down below in the description. So if you just look down below description of this video, you're going to be able to see this link. Go to the link, use the code, the Volleyball Coach, and you're getting free value. He's coming on here, not only giving us a ton of value for all the knowledge about the player side, the coach's side, and the parent side, but he's also going to go even further past this video so you can even get more value, right? And that's the awesome things that I'm going to bring on with all these guests. They're all going to come on. They're going to bring value like Josh has. And I'm actually super thankful for Josh taking some time out of his day to come to speak to everyone, to speak to me, and just for everyone to get some really amazing value.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Alejandro. And hope everyone takes this in. And like I said, one step closer to mastering their mind and their game.
That thing. Also, where else can they find you at? What's Instagram, your website, anywhere, anything else they should go look up for you?
Yeah, follow me on Instagram. It's just at VB Mindsetter, right? And you'll see me on there. So yeah, Instagram and then my website.
Awesome, guys. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Next week we'll have another amazing guest. Till next time.